What's up, guys? Eric from Living in the Mitten. Just want to give you guys a little update on what we've been up to. Working on the little silver bullet today, aka the storage unit. Trying to get my Dana 30 back together. As you guys seen in our last Silver Lake video, we had to gut the axle shafts out of it at Silver Lake to continue on with our weekend. I ended up chipping a tooth on my ring gear, or 10 teeth on my ring gear. Show you guys this in case you're new to the channel. But yeah, when I was at Silver Lake, I ended up grenading my ring gear, my pinion. It was caused from a broken axle shaft from one of our snow wheeling videos. Broke the axle shaft, must have chipped a tooth, put a new axle shaft in it, didn't know that I had chipped a tooth. There was some clicking going on in the front end. I thought it was drive shaft U-joint, and I was planning on going through those anyways, and I knew I wasn't going to really need the front drive shaft at Silver Lake, so I just said, screw it, ran it. Well, got to Silver Lake, front end was binding, locked it in four-wheel drive one time, blew the rest of the teeth off. Willie had the same problem. He broke a axle shaft that same snow wheeling weekend, ended up chipping a tooth. Luckily, he caught his before it just ate the whole ring gear. Just chipped a tooth, did a ring gear swap, he's good to go. So today, working on putting new gear set in my Dana 30. I am by no means a professional gear guy. I've done it a few times and have had moderate success, I guess. You're probably gonna say, well, you keep blowing them up. Well, this thing, it's got a 6 liter in it, so not 6 liter, and I run 35s most of the time, and they're heavy MTR, so not surprised. Dustin's broken a few, blah blah blah. We've all had Dana 30 problems. So got the old ring gear gutted, the old carrier out, housing's all cleaned. I'll drop some clips of me cleaning it. It's nothing fancy. I am gonna rerun my carrier bearings. They're in pretty good shape. The races look good. Kept track of them. Got my drivers, got my passenger side ones, kept track of the shim packs. So just cut the old bearing off the old pinion and measured the shim depth I had on that. They got pretty eaten up. Some chunks got in there, so got some new shims. You know, I don't know if you shim like this on a Dana 30, but that's how I'm gonna do it. Seems has worked for me in the past. And so yeah, so getting ready to put this bearing on. Now I don't have a press, but I'm gonna show you guys a little trick if you don't have a press on how to get your bearings on. Old buddy of mine, that's an old school mechanic, he taught me this trick, and it's a pretty trick, super easy. So right now I'm gonna put my ring gear on my carrier, my new ring gear, 488. It's an elite gear right here. Bam. There's a local gear guy near us that carries these in stock. He's just right down the road, so you just go over there. Ron's Machining Service in Swartz Creek. Dude's awesome. Give Ron a shout out. Quick shipping, he's always got stuff in stock. And then if you're fortunate enough like us here in Michigan, you can just drive over there, give him a call, tell him what you need, drive over there. He'll have it pulled and ready for you. He's got all kinds of bearings, gear sets. I mean, not just for Jeeps. He's got Ford, Chrysler, GM. I mean, you name it, he's got it. And if he doesn't have it, he'll get it for you quick. So good dude, hooks us up every time. But yeah, I'm gonna throw you guys on the old fast action camera deal where, you know, you don't have to see all the, so it's not super slow. So that's what we're up to. That's what I'm working on. Bring you guys along with me today. And thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna title this video The Hack Way to Put Your Dana 30 Back Together. So we'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, so got my ring gear on. Some of you might be saying, hey, what'd you torque those bolts to? I torqued them to whatever this here fancy impact set up on number 3 will run it, you know. That's the torque. So put a little red Loctite on the bolts. Little trick, I actually like to use some of the old bolts to draw it up tight. And then once it's seated, I pull the old bolts out, put a little Loctite on the new ones, send them all down in, you know. Nothing too fancy, you know, just, you know, tighten them cross, you know, and then I do what they call a ring out, go all the way around in my final sequence, just with the old torque gun. So I'm going to show you guys my little trick for putting pinion bearings on the pinion without a press. So what I got here is I got this this old toaster oven sitting around, and you throw your bearing in there. I think I got her set at about 350 for about 15 minutes. Throw your old bearing in there, heat that bearing up, and then what I do is I got the pinion in the old freezer here. Getting cold, the cold will shrink the pinion, the heat will grow the bearing, and hopefully be a nice fit. So, you know, pull the bearing out, put it on the pinion with a pair of thick gloves. Then I'll set the pinion up on this base on my vise. Get yourself a punch and a hammer, and you're gonna want to smack. You don't want to smack the outer bearing cage. You want to smack like the inner part of the bearing. I think I don't know what it's called exactly, but I'll show you guys how I do that. Usually goes pretty good. I'm taking a chance on my shim setup. My last setup, I had there's 60 thousandths underneath the bearing. I'm going back with that same pinion depth, same gear manufacturer, so I'm hoping it's really close. Normally what I do is I would use a setup bearing or a setup race, but since it's the same gear ratio, the same brand of gear, I'm taking a chance. I'm just gonna slap the same shims that I had under there before, and hopefully she works out good for a pinion depth. But I will show you guys how I do this bearing install, and we'll put it in and see where she's at. Okay, well, I didn't catch that on camera. I forgot to turn the camera on, but just so you know, pulled the bearing out of the thing, put it on the pinion. It literally slid right on. I didn't even have to hit it with the hammer. 15 minutes in the freezer, 15 minutes in the oven for the bearing. They slide right on. No, there was no need to beat on it. Just slapped her right on. Easy as that. So that's what you got to do. It's easy peasy if you don't have a press. Little toaster oven, little freezer. Put the bearing on. If you have to, tap it down with a punch and a hammer. Sometimes they just slide right on like this one did. So should be good to go. Gonna let this thing cool off a little bit and throw her in and pattern her out, see what happens. Quick little side note, if you do have to tap it on, I just wanted to show you guys what I meant by where to hit the bearing if you're using a punch to tap it on. You're gonna wanna, you don't wanna hit this outer part. You wanna try to get your punch to this inner, this punch is too big, but you wanna try to get your punch to this inner race. Smaller, I would have needed a smaller punch. Luckily, it went good for me and it just slid on by hand, but you don't hit the cage, you'll beat the cage up and ruin the bearing. So hit the inner, tap her down, good to go. But if you're lucky like me, they just slide right on after a few minutes in the freezer and a few minutes in the toaster oven. All right, pinion's in. A couple little tech tips on running a pinion setup. So number one, when you're going to put your pinion in, if you're just checking a pattern, don't use your crush sleeve. Leave your crush sleeve out until final assembly. And then another thing I do is I use my old pinion nut, the old one. These are locking style nut. So I use my old one for doing all this fit up because the locking mechanism is like wore out of it from being set up from the last time. So how do you know how far to tighten it without a crush sleeve in there? So I tighten it up till there's no slop forward and back, and then I just bump the impact a little bit at a time until there's just like some rotational resistance. I shoot for probably 10 to 15 pounds of rotational resistance. If you're not 100% sure, You can always get yourself one of these handy dandy things from the auto parts store, like O'Reilly's. It's an inch-pounds torque wrench or whatever. You put it on here, you just pull it nice and evenly. You can probably see it's about 10 to 12 pounds. You just want a little bit of preload on your pinion bearings, and that's pretty good for just setting it up, checking a pattern. Another thing that I'll do too, and I'll show you guys, I actually, when I get my carrier in to run my pattern, I use my drill motor and I put this socket on it, and that way I can run it by hand, keeping some pressure on the ring gear to eliminate any slop. I'll show you guys how I do that. But yep, that's how I do initial setups on my pinions. Use the old nut. Get yourself one of those inch-pound torque wrenches from the auto parts store. They're cheap. They're like 20 bucks, 30 bucks maybe, or you can order one on the Jungle website. And yeah, no crush sleeve for the setup. You don't want to ruin those crush sleeves. So gonna get the carrier in, and I'll bring you guys back. All right, quick little ad. So if you lose track of what side your bearing caps go on, if you can see right here, the lighting's terrible in my garage, but you can see on the housing there's an E stamped on each side. The E's are facing this way, and this one's facing down on this side. And in the caps, you won't be able to see it because it's very lightly punched, but in the caps, the same E will be punched in the cap. That's how they come from the factory, and you just match the E on the housing up with the E on the cap, and that's how you know what side your bearing caps go on. So, little tech tip, if you forget to mark your caps or whatever, there's usually some good markings on the housing that you can reference to make sure you get your bearing caps back on the right side. All right, got her in. Got the indicator here. One thing you're gonna have to do is probably get a dial indicator. You know, some guys can do it by feel. You know, if you've done a few of these and you can know. When I first put mine in, I knew my backlash was a little tight. So I was figuring about 3-4 thousandths, and turns out it was right about 3. So, you know, the trick to this is let me get my flashlight here. So you want to get your indicator on the tip of a tooth where it's not touching this other tooth. Zero your indicator out as close as you can, or just know where it's at, and I put my hand on the ring gear. I don't know if I can, there it goes. You can see it's moving about 3 thousandths, which is a little tight. You know, they're 5 or 6 thousandths would probably be, you know, what I really like. Just so you guys know, if you do, you know, put this all in, your backlash is a little tight, still run a pattern. Don't waste all this time, you know, just trying to chase a backlash. Run a pattern, see where you're at first. You know, I'm gonna leave this where it's at. It's not perfect, but I don't really care. I'm just getting this thing back together. This is not like a rig that's gonna go down the road for 100,000 miles. You know, maybe 5,000 miles in 5 years. It's my wheeling rig, so I'm pretty happy with the initial setup, and I'm just gonna leave it. So I'll show you guys the pattern real quick. It's not perfect either. The pinion's a little too deep, which meaning the pinion is a little bit, you know, too far in, which is fine. I think you get a little bit more, you know, contact on the gear with it being a little deeper. So pull the indicator off, show you guys the pattern here. See if I can get my light over here, but see if the flashlight will be better. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see, you know, this is the drive side. You can see the pattern's a little to the inside of the carrier, which means it's too deep on the inside, and the coast is to the, let's see if you guys can see that, to the outside. I always try to read, like, these aren't the teeth that I painted. These are like some other teeth on the other side. It just gives you a more clear definition of you know, where it's actually touching. But I'm pretty happy with this pattern. You know, like I say, keep saying, chances are I'm probably gonna strip this ring gear again before it's even probably properly broke in. I probably won't even put enough miles on it this year for a proper break in. It'll probably be, you know, if I put 500 miles on this thing this year, I'd be shocked. So I'll show you guys this little chart that I use from Yukon. They got it online here. So this is what my pattern looks like right here. Coast is to the inside. They saying this is an acceptable pattern. I've seen a lot worse set up. So I'm going to run her just like she is. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time trying to get it all perfect. But just so you guys can see it again. It's kind of hard to see. But yeah. Like I said, backlash is a little tight on it, but coast drive looks like it's, you know, you can see the definite line, you know, where in the bottom of the tooth where I'm getting full tooth contact. So yeah, gonna leave her, gonna pull it back apart, put the crush sleeve in. I'll show you guys how I do that. You gotta have a good impact to get the crush sleeve right. So get that going a little bit at a time on the crush sleeve. You don't want to overdo it and over crush it and have too much pinion bearing preload. But other than that, like I said, I'm happy with the way the pattern turned out for the first shot. Not going to play with it. I'm just going to run it. You know, the backlash is 3. By the time everything clearances itself out and breaks itself in, it'll probably be more like 4 or 5. You know, so I'm just going to run it like that. It won't whine, or it's not going to kill that ring gear. So a little bit better view of the pattern here on the ring gear. You guys can see it. Coast is to the outside, which is right here, the coast side, and then the drive side, which you look at from the bottom, is to the inner. So I'm like I said, pretty happy with that. We're gonna run it. Alright, little crush sleeve info. Just so you know, if you don't remember how you took your old crush sleeve off, there's 2. It goes on, you know, right here. You want that crush sleeve touching your bearing down here. If you put it on upside down, it won't go all the way down. See how it rests up on this shoulder? You gotta make sure it's on the right way. So make sure you guys get that right, otherwise you won't have proper bearing preload. So 2 ways you can put it on. Make sure it's the right way. Alright, got the pinion back in with the crush sleeve on it now. Got my yoke on. I'll just give you guys a little tip. You guys put the yoke on and you're trying to get it drawn up. I use the old nut to get it drawn up. And then once it's pretty close, like there's barely any back and forth slop, I take the old nut off, put the new nut on. So what we're doing now is just very slowly tightening this. You gotta have a big impact. It takes a lot of force. They say like 300 pounds to get the crush sleeve to crush. So I got one of these big Milwaukees. It barely turns the nut, but it does turn it and it will get it there. So you gotta take your time, a little bit at a time. Just what I do is I watch the socket just rotate a little bit. I stop, check, spin. You know, we're looking for that 12 to 15 pounds of pinion preload, pinion bearing preload. So I'll set you guys up, the camera up, and you can watch me tighten this up a little bit at a time. You'll see me stopping a lot, starting again, just trying to get it so it's set up just right. So here we go. All right, got the crush sleeve crushed right on the money. So took a few tries. You guys seen the time lapse, but she's right at about 15 pounds. So right where I want her. We're gonna let her ride right there. Put the carrier back in. Haven't decided if I'm gonna repattern yet or not. Yeah, probably will. nah. Good, probably good enough for what we're doing. So, gonna get her slapped back together and bring you guys back in when it's all back together. All right, got the front end all buttoned up. So you guys seeing that time lapse there? Let's see, can you see it? Yep. So got oil in it, just some 80/90 from your local parts store. Dana 30s take about 1.25 quarts, maybe a little less. So what I like to do, I get all the oil in it, and then before you actually go out and drive it, I like to just take my drill, lighting's bad, and just spin her a few times with the drill. Get that oil moving around inside them bearings, you know, and all over the housing before you go out and put any load on it. This is just free spinning right now. You know, spin her for a couple minutes each way and get the oil where it needs to be. So I gotta, I have to pull my brakes and wheel bearings all apart to put my axle shafts back in. I got one more little tip on axle joints for you guys in this video, so I'll get this all tore apart and get the U-joints back in the axle shafts, and I'll show you guys that little tip, and that'll pretty much conclude this hack Dana 30 re-gear. Like I said, it's not a million-mile rig. She just my wheeler, so everything doesn't have to be super perfect. If you are doing it to your daily, you know, there's some really great videos on how to get really in depth on setting these up. But if you're just a wheeler like me, looking to do it down and dirty and quick, you know, use some of my tips and tricks and you'll get there. So let me get this these tore apart, and I'll bring you guys back on for my last little axle joint tip for you guys. All right, finishing up this gear install, put my front end back together. Got my passenger side axle shaft here. Brand new joint in it. This is a spare I'm just putting back together. But so one thing I like to do is I like to put 4 tacks in all the caps, 4 tack welds, like with my little MIG welder here. Helps keeps the caps in. I think one of the major failure points of a Dana 30 or any axle shaft really is the caps actually will pop out. The retainer clips that hold them in will pop out. So I like to throw 4 tacks on it. I don't know, you guys tell me, is that trash or is that a good idea? I don't know, we've always been doing it that way. We've never had a bearing failure from it. So that's what I'm doing, putting 4 tacks in each one of the caps on these axle shafts, and then I'm going to be slapping them back together. So that's going to conclude my Dana 30 hack gear install video. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you learned anything or at least picked up on any of my tips and tricks or anything like that. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.